Hey, and welcome to another video where we're covering Kiwi Birds and Infinity again. I thought, just because it's Infinity Week, I wanted to do sort of a video where I can wrap up and do a little more Mulligan guide and talk through the sort of 3 popular matchups that you're going to see in Infinity and do as like a general one as well. Like really enjoying the deck. Like I say, it's probably been my only real Infinity video this week, but I just thought I'd love to get it out there so people can enjoy it. It seems like loads of people have some really fun events coming up at their local scene. For us personally, we're just going to do a extra league night and enjoy the format that, you know, a lot of people don't get to play much, and maybe if everyone enjoys it, we end up doing more. But just jumping right into this video, I'm just going to cover 3 matchups that you're going to find very popular, sort of general one, and then like go into the bit of the Mulligan. So for starters, you know, generally playing this deck, we've got the list on the screen. It is very much still a curve deck. What we put into here that we never really saw, actually, to be honest with you, I didn't cover this too much in the other video, is how much different we play Kiwi with Porpscore and Bell. Of course, when it was really popular, we were just doing an absolute curve out, and we'd play cards like Robin Hood as 1-drops and like Captain Hooks and whatever. And we just played them down and then just curved out, and we made sure we had a 1-cost, 2-cost, 3, 4 in our hand, and Optimi, Alice, and Pluto. With this build as well, you of course get built in a Alice high roll, and it's kind of like the same as, I could say, akin to putting Ramp into your hand, really, when you're looking for it in the Mulligan. So in general, a hand like this, I think we're not too, if you're on the play, I would do something like this, just, you know, definitely if it's blind. I don't know how important Nala is going to be. You know, if it's a Sapphire deck, we do need that. We would prefer the Nala, but Mr. Smee's not that bad either. If it's anything else, you know, we'd probably want like purple steel, green purple, or anything, or ruby amethyst, something that fights for the board. And Nala can not always be the most impactful card as well, and it's stuck in your hand once you get it. We're not operating with huge uninks here, but you know, just to make sure that we get a very strong curve out, I keep these ones, and we could keep Headless Horseman and then say like hope we look for Alice, but then we're kind of hurting our chances of getting the Alice. I'd rather go one deeper and find the Alice and not the Headless Horseman, so I'd probably look at something like that. And there you go, you've got like a fairly good curve out with Ink, play the Porpscore, Fortisphere, get Bell into Mr. Smee. Then we could probably just play a Pete on curve if we need to. That's a free drop, why not? Curve it out to Cogsworth, play the dock, and we'll have this board of like 3/3 bodies and a big Cogsworth. Hopefully we draw some more impactful things in there as well, like Headless Horseman or Hiram, or we can't really play the Hiram if we pop the Porpscore, but you know, we could find some other things in there that just we could play on the board instead. Alice would be amazing as well, just to kind of get the board a bit wider. All these sort of options here. We've got things like I'd be Headless Horseman mainly, but playing another Alice, playing a Nala, then playing Cogsworth, then full questing is also not the worst in the world for us. So generally, it's speaking like in a general thing, like if you're just going to your match 1 and you really don't know what your opponent is playing, the things like this are pretty easy to keep. Like I say, we have no Mr. Smee here, so we really are just keeping that turn 1, 2 into whatever we find later on. We could keep a Hiram, but I'm going to send it back for now, looking for that Alice. And there you go, that's kind of a funky hand. It'd be pretty fun. You know, ink probably one of these Porpscores. You'll be surprised how much you can ink Porpscore in this matchup. You could ink it right at the start and play the Porpscore pop for the Bell, or you could maybe ink a Headless Horseman, play Porpscore, Bell, Nala, and then maybe on turn 3 we play Porpscore and we get a 2-drop, 1-drop, whatever it is, so we can do the maths up and double spell and play 2 things. Sing the Strength, play Headless Horseman, create a very awkward board where they probably can't kill your Nala, and it's pretty much that simple in the general scheme of things. I can go over just one more. I'd say on the draw, you know, on the play on the draw, we're looking for the exact same things here. This is almost really a full keep here. I think it's pretty much that good. You know, if I was on the play on the draw, I would probably look at something like this. Maybe if I go for this, you know, I can go for the nuts and try to find a Headless Horseman. I could even keep the Cogsworth because I'm feeling so comfortable with this hand. As long as my turn 4 is play something, I'll be pretty fine with that. So I could even do this, or you could, you know, if you want to be greedy, you keep the Cogsworth because it's quite impactful. You know, imagine we have this board of Bell, Nala, Alice set up, and whatever we've drawn 4, hopefully we draw something good, and then we can play that down, and then we play Cogsworth, and it's just got full ward protection. So, you know, even like that, it's not too bad. You know, you can sing the Let the Storm with the Bell, take out whatever. There's always a target or something to kill on their side, or banish on their side, sorry. Play the Cogsworth down on, play the McDuck Manor on 4, Cogsworth, and then just, you know, McDonald is probably the most optimal thing. We'd rather get something that could get some Cogsworth value, but altogether, all these hands have been great. And I'll admit as well, the first 3 mulligans I've done on this Dreamborn simulator have all had Bell and an item starting in turn 1. It doesn't always happen that way. I feel like you're fine to look for it. Don't go too heavy on it. I'll try find a hand where we don't have it. You know, like here, like we're not going to go too heavy for it, but kind of naturally, just the way the deck is like gonna figure itself out is that, well, we don't need another Smee, we don't need this, we don't need these 3-cost songs, we don't need that, so we're gonna end up going like that, and we end up finding the Bell kind of just passively because we're looking for a curve. We passively find the Bell. You know, if this hand was the same and we didn't have the Porpskull and we had the Bell, you know, if we only had these 2 cards, sorry, and this Porpskull was a Bell, I'd still send the 5 back looking for that sort of curve. You know, just trying to find the most optimal curve that you can, and working in the Bell turn 1 as well, because it unlocks all these songs, it unlocks a 3/3 body, it just does so much for us. And just another note as well, like we do have 2 Mulan in there. I'm honestly as well in the thought of, if I have the Mulan, I'm really just not going to look that hard for the Bell. You know, if I've got a Mulan and an item, maybe I will send the rest back looking for the curve. And if we find Bell, we get to ink the Mulan, play the Porpskull, pop for Bell, do all of those fun things, but I'm not going to go so hard on it. The deck is not make or break by it, but you know, having these amazing openers where you've got Bell turn 1 into a aggressive 2-quester like Nala or Smee, into Let the Storm Rage on, into Strength, singing those things and then just curving out, you know, is really, really powerful. But ultimately, a strong curve tends to just win the game with this deck. So if you don't get Bell turn 1 that often, or you just, you know, you have a night where you don't get it, don't fret too much. It shouldn't work out that badly, and hopefully the games will present all that show that information to you when you play them. But it's just such a powerful opener turn 1. It feels very strange for us to not play it. Basically just this combo, and then we get to include things like Hiram in there, and that's awesome. So that's sort of the general game plan for the deck. You're still looking for that strong curve. Bell, like turn 1, is very powerful. I'd say even there are matchups where I'm really going to go for it, because if I don't find it, especially into the aggressive decks, I won't have it. But ultimately not that important in a general blind mulligan. So going through the matchups, I did actually make notes, which is the first time I've ever really done that in a video, which is mad. We'll go into the Amber Steel one, as I mentioned. We're going through notes here, and Amber Steel is kind of one of the more aggressive decks. You will probably see it. It's aggressive, but it's very consistent at being aggressive. It's pretty much always going to find stuff that it can quest with, which is mad. By the turn 1, they're looking for that Daisy. Of course, they've got Mulans, they've got Cinderellas as well, so they can be aggressive as well. They've got all of those fun things. You know, the Rhino shifts if they like. They've got all those little bits they can put in there. But ultimately, their 2-drop slot now is just so aggressive at questers. You know, you've got Lilo, Penny, Nala, Piglet, like you're just going to play an aggressive quest run 2, and because they play so many 1s, you know, their turn 3 could be a 2-drop and a 1-drop, and if not, they play the Lady card that allows them to play a 2-drop, so they can just keep creating this aggressively wide board of characters and loads of lore pressure. So in my opinion, like if this was, we're going to start a new hand, but I was going to say, if this was the hand that I drew, I would definitely get rid of McDonald, get rid of these 2, and you've got a very nice opener there, and it's kind of the cards I wanted to see, which is nice. It's on my screen. Porpskull into Bell, and having a song in hand, just to throw it out there, get some removal. You know, they will play Mowgli's, they're sort of working in and out of lists as well, so keep that in mind. But you know, an aggressive Mowgli on 2 is kind of better for you than them playing a Nala or something like that, because this strength ultimately is not that important, and the Mowgli means that they just didn't play a really strong quester. So you know, take the good with the bad on that point. And then you've got Smee, just put another body on the board to say like, hey, I'm going to hit your daisies, and we're going to do some maths here, and we're going to take things out. So to be honest with you, these 3, and I'd call it a Let the Storm Rage on instead of Strength for the Raging Fire, and then the rest is Inkable, is probably the most optimal opener hand you can get for this matchup. Porpskull, Bell, Mr. Smee, and Let the Storm. Rest you want to be sort of ink and maybe cheap cards. So yeah, like I say, if I'm going against Amber Steel, especially on the play, on the draw, I'm not really talking too much about on the play, on the draw for some of these matchups. And in general, the deck is a curve deck. It aims to do the same thing every game. On the draw, it doesn't really change much. That's why every time I'm just giving you sort of blanded sort of like boilerplate, you know, not blanded, they're not boring or anything. They're just, you know, very standard mulligans, because on the play, on the draw, you kind of want to do the same thing. On the draw, you want to maybe apply some more pressure and do some double spelling, but overall, when we're in the mulligan stage, we are doing the exact same thing. I think in general, I think we are, is my opinion. So looking at this hand here, like if I was on the play, And on the draw, yeah, all that tangent wasn't really worth it saying all that stuff. I'd just keep the Force Spirit and the Mr. Smee, meaning our odds for getting that Bell turn 1 are not huge. And if we miss any character, you know, if we look at the list, you know, we have Nala's at the 2-drop slot and we have Mulan, but those aren't really amazing characters. So if we don't play anything, we're just going to fall so far behind because they're just going to aggressively quest out with Piglet, Smee, whatever, and they get Cindy turn 1 and they sing strength on Smee, and you're just so far behind. But you know, it's going to be a poor matchup. It can be very play draw, you know, sometimes. But I would just send these ones back. And there you go. You kind of have this like plethora of good characters that you can throw onto the board. I don't think you'd be needing Hiram in this matchup. We don't think we'll ever get to a point where we can establish it. Mainly because I want to protect and ink and play this Headless Horseman. You know, we get the Force Sphere down. If we're on the draw, you know, maybe they played Mulan or played Rhino. We could maybe just get this Mulan out instead and say, well, if you have the shift, you can quest. But if not, I can just take it out with my Mulan. Into Smee, into... You know, at turn 3, I'd want to play another Smee and then play a Fortisphere or play the Mulan, depending on which one we have. You know, and that's why it's important to ink the Hiram, I think, in this hand. Into the Headless Horseman. The Headless Horseman's stats are very important here. Basically means it can take out things. If people are playing Tianas, you know, which you do sometimes see, even though it's pretty rough to play that card in Infinity because of Red's removal, people still play it. And also Daisy Duck as well. Just that 4 health stat line means the Headless Horseman can deal with it. It will be a bit later on. Sometimes them questing with Daisy can be beneficial to you because it means you draw a bunch of cards. And also Headless Horseman, for the majority of cards besides Rapunzel, kind of plays around Rapunzel trapping. And so you're kind of freely to exert it. They can't run it in, you know, take the damage and then heal from it and draw a bunch of cards. So, you know, altogether, that's just a really interesting and fun card. And I think the way you want to do it is the same way that, you know, Purple Steel kind of deals with Amber Steel with their Calhouns, and the way that they fight it is you want to be removing their stuff. So we want to be getting Mr. Smee, want to get these characters established, taking out their things, hoping they burn out a bit. They do have Rapunzel now, but they still do burn out even in Infinity. And then, you know, hopefully you have a bunch of characters that you can full quest and just get a bunch of lore. If you play a Cogsworth down and you've got these 2 Smees that have still survived, maybe they have a bit of damage on them, but they've survived, full quest. Cogsworth can quest as well. They're probably not going to do 5 damage to Cogsworth, even if he's exerted, you know. You can just run away with the game, you know, hoping that they just don't high roll on the docks. Their deck is quite built still around high rolling on that dock card. Not giving them too much Rapunzel value. Making sure that their questing is very scary if they want to do it. You know, if they're gonna Nala you on 2 and you play Smee, you can take that trade quite easily, which means they might just keep it upright, which means they will keep applying more characters and going wide the same way they have it in core. It's kind of the same deck, they just have a bit more draw of Rapunzel. So we want to match that of characters, so whenever they turn sideways we can take their things out, and hopefully along the way of us building these boards and all those things, we can get a Cogsworth full quest, or we can sing strength, or we can throw some removal at them as well and just create these really awkward board states. But in general, yeah, the matchup I think is very much looking as aggressively as you can as the cheapest stuff in the deck. So the reason why I'm going to look for the Bell, this one, way more than any other matchup is if I get it, I feel way more favoured in the matchup. Bell is like Cinderella, but stronger, just, you know, conditional wise is a bit harder to get on the board. So yeah, there you go. I think in my opinion, that's probably good to end it on that one. That's like one of the most optimal opening hands. You'd ink the mana, play the Fort Sphere, get the Bell out. You can let the Storm if they Cindy and Cindy can't really do much to you, or whatever, Rhino, or you've just got a 3/3 set up. Into the Mr. Smee, into, you know, Alice, into singing strength on anything, and you pretty much should win the board at that point. So that's pretty good to end it on that one. I think as well, Alice is pretty important because, as I say, when you want to be fighting them and taking their stuff out, you also don't want to just be stopping them from winning. You want to be winning yourself. So getting a 1/4 that quests and gives an extra lore pip and ward is also very impactful, because it means you can turn the corner. Like you say in card games, turn the corner and now it's you're winning the game and they're not winning the game. So yeah. I think that's probably the most optimal hand I could have opened with. And then going into red blue, which is the next one, and I think that's, again, this is the matchup where when it's the Sapphire matchups, we kind of have to flip into being the aggro, full-on aggro deck. When it's the control, like when it's anything that's not Sapphire, we kind of want to use the control aspects, which is Bell and all of our song package, and, you know, all of the bodies we have, and Cogsworth giving us good trades into things like Purple Steel. I doubt you'll see Purple Steel Infinity. But into the Sapphire deck, so Ruby Sapphire, and then I'll cover Sapphire Steel. They kind of have a very similar matchup. We really want to be going for as aggressive lore on the board as we can. And here I think is really great to the point where I'm going to ink this Hiram. Actually, I'm going to ink this Strength of the Raging Fire against Ruby Sapphire. Sorry, quickly change that very quickly. Very quickly change that one. I'd ink the Strength of the Raging Fire. There's a chance where we need it on the little Sisu, but really I'm just trying to get as aggressive out the gate. You know, if we're on the play, we can play the Fortisphere, pop for Bell. Then we can get Nala set down. We can get Mr. Smee set down. We can maybe play this Hiram. We can maybe even ink this Hiram over the Strength. It's an interesting choice, actually. I think it might actually be the Hiram because we'd need another item. If we had another item, I'd say no, because then we can play this on 3 plus the item, then play Hiram next turn against a bunch of cards. So once they board clear, we throw more on the board. But really, I want to be doing this Bell turn 1 into Nala. Nala, this is where it's, I think, into these Sapphire matchups, it's a bit more impactful to open with the Nala. Mr. Smee is not really rumbling or fighting for anything on the board, whereas Nala is just going to gain you a bunch of lore, force them to have the answers like a little Sisu or a Brawl or something like that, and really just push the game further in your favor. I think into the Sapphire matchups, it's just a lot more impactful to have these aggressive questers. But yeah, I'd really want to hope here is that we curve out a lot of characters, compete before they can do anything very important. A lot aren't really on Be Prepared, a lot are on like just Sisu board wipe coil nonsense that, you know, everyone loved that. Everyone loved that stuff in the last few sets, so they're back on that. And you know, they just sort of just board wipe you with the Sisu. So the Pete cannot be that impactful, but it's Pete and Muktuk Mana, which are the two powerful cards, because you curve out, you gain a bunch of lore, then when they do their board wipe, you can either Pete if they are using action-based removal, or you can play Muktuk Manas and say, well, my board's gone, but now here's a location, and then after that you just keep playing more stuff, give them more characters, and hopefully you can achieve that with a Doc or a Hiram or whatever, or, you know, you just hold some cards back in your hand, or however it's going to be. So yeah, I'd go into another hand again, like here. Pretty simple Mulligan. I'm looking for as aggressive questing as I can. Let the Storm again is quite impactful against a little Sisu when they've thrown it on the board, a 3-cost one. But really, I don't know if I'd keep it in the Mulligan. You might not even see it. This hand, I guess, is very, very optimal. If I was on the play on the draw, it doesn't really matter. I think on the play, on the draw, sorry, I'd hope to draw a card and maybe I could keep some of this hand. But on the play, I think I'd start with inking this Pete to begin with. And as I say, I just don't think they play that much action-based removal, but Pete is very good when they do, especially into other red decks that use it. Get the Bell out with the turn 1, into Nala, into Mr. Smee, into keep questing, into throwing anything that I can on the board whilst keeping my ink up. Mana, and then, you know, there's very awkward ways for them to deal with these manas, and by that time, if they're dealing with the manas, they're not dealing with your board. You should just be getting over line with just an aggressive game plan, and then, you know, you might get to like 18 lore or something, but top deck and Alice, put it on the board. Hopefully they ran out of Sisus or whatever. Remember, they are still fairly quite slow with the deck, and their turn 4 might be establishing something like a what do you call it, like a Hiram. So they aren't really, they're getting more resources in their hand, which is fine, but they won't be attacking anything on the board. You know, you get to keep running away with the game. And Nala, you really, if we can get an opener here where, if I could show it, where it was Pop, I'd say the most optimal is sort of Pop School Bell, get Nala, Alice into any sort of bodyguard, because, you know, they're just all playing the 5-cost Maui, and then just running away with the game for a bit, playing Muktuk Manas down and saying like, right, so what do you want to deal with, because this mana is going to tick and go for about 4 or 6 lore, or you can kill the board. I think in general, I've just got you in checkmate and won the game. So yeah, I think that's kind of really how you want to do it, and that is it. You just play the full aggro package of the deck, and especially in this matchup, getting Bell down turn 1 on Mulan, it really doesn't matter. Just anything that has Quest for 1 on it, or just anything that says Quest on your turn 1 would be great. You know, there are options to use cards like the Sultan, but he is a 1-drop 2-quester, but I just really don't think it's worth it. It negatively impacts everything, and then you're slightly maybe better into Sapphire decks if they don't Tipo on 2, because Tipo on 2 kind of checks all of these 1-drop 1/1 quests for 2 characters, and it's kind of why I just don't like the card. So yep, just as I say, as aggressive lines out of the gate as you can. Muktuk Mana, Pete, Pete probably more impactful into the DKP Shark builds, and then Mana is probably way more impactful into all of the Sisu on Ice builds and all the Sailor builds. So just keep that in mind. But again, it's playing this really aggressive opener. And then we're going finally into Sapphire Steel, which I think will be another really common matchup. Not the mirror, the ramp build. So looking at this hand, sort of, if I was on the play, honestly, I know I mentioned in general don't keep Nala, but I would want to be, if I was going really greedy, this was a hand I'd probably look at. You know, if I was on the play and I was looking really greedy, I'd go Nala into Alice because it really does. And then we got the Bell turn 1, which is that's just beautiful. I think here you'd ink a Porpskull, get Porpskull, play the Porpskull down, get the Bell down, hopefully get some better ink, if not ink the strength, get the Nala into Alice. And honestly, once you open Bell, Alice, Nala, and they don't pop for Bell, the only reason you keep the strength laying around is if they did pop for Bell, you could play Bell, Nala, Alice, strength their Bell, and then just fully quest. You know, they're never going to have characters enough to sing much removal. On the draw, you know, they might be able to ramp into Scrooge, but you know, if you're questing and warding up a Headless Horseman, who's going to have to 1-1 it, that unless they've done Bell, Tipo, run both of those in, they aren't really going to get the way to remove that Headless Horseman without just running the Scrooge in. So they're hoping for the most optimal lines as well. But really, opening Bell, Nala, Alice is just, it will feel amazing. It's probably like one of the best openers in Infinity, I think, in my opinion. Just being able to throw ward onto things as well. They really have to have every response they can. Like I say, if they've done Bell, Tipo, Scrooge, and they have some song-based removal, maybe they do win the game back, but you know, you can still throw removal from your Bell. You're just being the one who's being the aggressor as well, and just really aggroing out that game. So you play a Cogsworth on top as well, they really don't have an answer for that, you know, unless they play stuff like the 7-cost Arthur, which again is still quite late in the game, and they would have to have something else established to buff up the character using Arthur's effect. So in general, yeah, it just feels amazing if you can get Bell, Nala, Alice going out. But we'll do one more because I can't just talk about Bell, Nala, Alice all the time. I think here, like, I just look for these ones and then hopefully find that Porpskull. We have very high chance of finding that item, which we do. And then, yeah, I think we can just go straight into ink a Hiram, Porpskull, get the Bell out. Nala. Should probably ink one of these Mukduk Manors. Mukduk Manor is an interesting one against Sapphire still. I don't think it should be applied to as a win con because, you know, Ruby Sapphire is the one that will want to board wipe, and that's when they get the most use. So I'd actually probably ink the Mukduk Manor, play Porpskull, get Bell out, Nala into, hopefully we get something to do on turn 3. We most likely will get something to do. And just curve it out, maybe get to this, maybe Mukduk Manor to apply the early pressure. Like I say, if they don't get Bell and Scrooge out, they really can't do much about a location. They have to ramp up, then slam a big character down, then hit it like 2 or 3 times, or include some like really terrible cards that remove locations. And yeah, and you can just sort of curve out, get to the Cogsworth, just apply this weird pressure on the board. I'd maybe actually, sorry, I did say the Hiram, but I think I'd actually keep it lingering around the hand, because maybe on turn 3, you know, we could play it, and then on turn 4 we could break it and then draw a bunch of cards, and we're just going to out-resource them by throwing more on the board and asking more questions than they can answer, never letting them set up dime or anything like that. So again, here, this is an interesting one. I want to do one more quick mulligan on the play on the board. That's what I mean by, I think in this matchup it can be a bit more different, because if they Bell turn 1, you know, sod's law, it's sad luck for you, but you know, just getting a character down into these Sapphire matchups, this is quest for 1. And then again, you keep the Mulan, but it doesn't matter, we get to ink it, and we've kind of saved ourselves having a bad top deck. We get to play pop for Bell turn 1 into Nala, into maybe play the Smee, sing strength on their Bell on 3, full question out, throw a dock down, and you know, the jobs are good, and it's all done. And it's really just playing the aggressive lines that you can find with Kiwi. I think the main difference you might find with trying to use Bell and all these songs and just Hiram card draw as well is we look for a curve. We definitely want to find a curve. Sometimes that curve is not 1, 2, 3, 4, as you've seen through some of these mulligans, but we are trying our best to get as close as we can to that, and utilizing Hiram to get a bit more card draw as well can be fun. But we're not looking always for Alice warding a bodyguard. I think, you know, Bell protecting the 2-drop is sometimes good enough. If we can have Bell protecting the 2-drop and Alice and the bodyguard, you know, we're singing over the hills of that one. That one's amazing. But you know, in general, you know, we're just trying to use the cards that we have to our best advantage, which is always how I thought Kiwi was supposed to be played. So even though it might feel different sometimes with the lists using cards that maybe you didn't use when you played Kiwi, or you only played it pre-ban in set 7, we are still looking at our hand and going, right, what is the best we can do with this hand, how much lore can we produce with this hand, and the cards on the board, you know, which always just feels very different. Some decks, you know, that are trying to look for huge combo pieces, they're like, no, I can't win yet, I need to set up do my Prince Philip combo. We're just, how much lore can I produce this turn, how much value can I get out of this turn compared to my opponent, and that's still the deck, and that's still how it feels. So I hope some of those helped. It's probably going to be the last one I do on Infinity. just because Infinity Week's this week and we're all playing, but I hope this one can sort of help you out. And also as well, Infinity Week, I feel like I could name the top 3 decks, but your locals might all be filled with like green purple Diablo or something like that, which isn't going to be mine. So there's all of that interesting stuff as well. But hopefully that was good fun. Hopefully that was a bit of help as well.